marriage counseling just doesn't work. And there's lots of reasons for it. Number one, in my opinion, is because when you go there with your wife, you're both hoping that you and the therapist will gang up on the other person to make the other person change. Okay. That doesn't work. But what does work is guys increasing their sexual market value. So I don't work with couples. I work with men specifically. And what happens is when men work on themselves, their wives tend to come around because women are mirrors of their men. And you're like, well, she needs to change. She's the problem. She's a bitch, right? Well, you can't change her. You can only change yourself. So book a call with me. That's your first step. Second step is we get on a call. I will show you what it looks like if I can help you. And if I can't help you, I'll at least point you in the right direction. Okay. But it's a free call. So go to call.fixedadbedrooms.com. And then when you start working with me, you'll start noticing significant changes because of how you show up in the relationship as the leader. Okay. So book a free call with me today. Go to call.fixedbedrooms.com. All right. Boop. Okay. If you're a guy that's a go-getter, just get my book, Get Her to Fuck You Again. Go to books.comeonmanpod.com. Get the book and at least try to apply it yourself. And then if you run into problems, then book a call with me. That works too. All right. So AJ, the next concept here, AJ talks about controlled vulnerability. What's controlled vulnerability? Because we in the red pill space, we're like, don't be vulnerable with your girl. Like it's a trap, right? Ryan Stone, he says it pretty well. Like when a girl wants you to be more vulnerable with her, really what she's saying is she is feeling insecure in the moment and she thinks you're thinking a certain way or feeling a certain way. And she just wants to know that she's not feeling these feelings of insecurity in a bubble, right? And so when she comes to you and wants you to be more vulnerable, basically what she wants is for you to just repeat back how she's feeling. You're like, so when she comes to you and she's like, hey, I want you to be more open with me. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you're feeling. You need to go back to her and go, well, what makes you think I'm feeling a certain way? What has you thinking this? What has you feeling this, right? And when she explains to you, like, oh, well, you're sitting down and you're not expressing yourself, and you have this, look on your face, like you're bothered by something. You just repeat that back to her, right? You're like, okay, so let me get this straight. You don't like that I'm, me sitting here with this look of frustration on my face. That makes you feel, like I'm upset, right? It's almost like the Luca bottle, right? You just repeat back what she's feeling. And then she's going to feel like you've been vulnerable with her, right? Like all you're doing is just repeating back what she says. You don't even have to agree with her. It's amazing. But anyway, AJ says, controlled vulnerability balances openness with emotional resilience to foster trust without losing control. It builds deeper connections while maintaining personal integrity, and it encourages mutual support without overburdening relationships. And I think really the key here is that, and I say it a lot too, right? Like we're not robots. We have feelings. We go through problems. We go through struggles. Your wife will see when you're going through struggles, right? So when she asks about your day and stuff like that, and she can see that you've had a very, stressful day, and you find yourself opening up to her about like all the problems in your day, that's okay. Because that's going to make her feel like you're human, like, oh man, my man's going through some stuff, right? But at the end of that, you've got to, if you're going to do that, you can't just emotionally trauma dump on her, okay? Or else she's going to think that you can't handle your shit, right? So at the end of that, you got to say, yeah, this is a tough day, but tomorrow's going to be a better day, right? Or, yeah, but we got all that stuff fixed, right? Or I've got a plan going forward on how to fix this, right? Anything that basically shows her that you have it handled allows you to be more open with her, and then she's still going to feel secure that you have your shit together, right? So that's where controlled vulnerability comes in, right? The next concept here is balancing masculine presence with emotional support. Okay, so masculine presence combines decisiveness and empathy for a well-rounded approach. Fair. Compassionate leadership involves setting high standards while supporting others. And this is where, it's good to, make sure that you're holding yourself to a high standard first. You can't hold anyone else to a high standard if you don't hold high standards for yourself, right? There's a lot of guys that they they've let themselves go. They've gotten to become like fat, lazy bastards, and then they complain that their wives have gotten fat. It's like, well, dude, what are you doing, right? So if you want her to lose a bunch of weight and get in shape, you need to lead by example. Okay. That's where masculine presence will help that. And then you can sort of encourage her to start doing the same thing, right? And then when she sees that you're doing it, she knows that you're not just complaining about her and doing nothing. She can't come back with like, well, you're not doing anything, You're like, oh, well, because clearly you are, right? So if you're like, hey, honey, like, why don't you come to the gym with me and stuff, right? That's a better way of encouraging that kind of change in her by leading by example, right? Strength and emotional availability coexist to enhance trust and connection. Uh, AJ's kind of got a little too blue pilled in some of this chapter stuff. It's for my liking, I don't like the idea of like, I don't know, uh, all these concepts of emotional availability. Basically, like what all that really means is like women just want to feel heard and understood. Like they don't care about your emotions, you know what I mean? So you have to be available to listen to her, right? And that comes from a position of leadership. But if you're there and you can listen to her, that does make her feel more safe and secure in the relationship because she feels like she could come to you and that you're not going to judge her and all this kind of stuff. Women are just like balls of insecurity. You know what I mean? They really need that structure and they just can't seem to provide it for themselves. And if they are providing it for themselves, that means that they have to get into their masculine, right? They have to really embrace their masculine. And then they start pushing away men because now they're being like more of a man in the relationship. And then it's like that's where polarity dies. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Impact on family dynamics is the next concept. So, emotional durability helps maintain calm and stability in complex family situations. Man, that's another thing. Like, my new client too, he has, I think, a big compounding problem in his relationship is that he and his wife have two small children, right? They have like the oldest is a 3-year-old and their youngest is like an 11-month old, so when you have two small children like that creates a lot of stress, right? Like think about it. If any of you guys are dads out there, when your kids are like 2 and 3, that is like the worst age. That's the absolute worst age. They call it terrible twos for a reason, right? It's like terrible twos and terrible threes. They're both like the worst. That's where like temper tantrums come because the kids can't really articulate what their needs are, and so when their needs aren't getting met, they throw all these tantrums, and they're just like they're a handful. And then when you have a baby that's only 11 months old that's still nursing, babies cry and they get up like 4 times a night. And then the toddlers are getting up, like nobody's sleeping in that house, right? That just adds a lot of stress to the relationship. So if you, as the man, as the leader in the relationship, can work on your emotional durability, you can provide some stability during those complex situations, right? I know like you're stressed out too, but that's where the emotional durability comes in because you're able to stay calm under all that stress and pressure, loss of sleep, all that kind of stuff. And then assertive boundaries prevents perpetuation of generational dysfunction. So this is where I really find it beneficial for guys to work with me and like get my book, Get Her to Fuck You Again, or any of these essential skills series books, um, or work with me one-on-one, because a lot of the reasons why we as men have relationship problems is because we've never been taught how to have that emotional durability, how to have solid frame, how to be unshakable, right? And so um what you'll find is that we learn our relationships, like how to handle relationships from our parents. And if you have constantly had failure after failure in relationships, if you look back and look at like your parents' relationship, like how healthy was that? Right. And some people will go, well, my parents are still together. Yeah, but are they happy? My parents are still together. I think they're miserable together, right? So like I learned my sort of bad relationship dynamics from my parents. And then I carried that into my adult life, and I had a couple of failed relationships under my belt until I realized I'm the common denominator here. I need to fix something. And that's when I realized, like, man, I had no emotional durability, man. I was a firecracker, dude. I had like the worst temper in the world. Worst temper in the world. Sometimes it still gets the best of me. I try not to let it because I've been working on my emotional durability over the last several years. So it's gotten like infinitely better. But man, I used to have such a bad temper, man. Such a bad temper. And I learned that from my dad. And so now that I've learned how to control that, luckily my kids have seen that over the years, and they see how like I handle my relationship with like Nurse Chick, for instance. They're seeing that as the model of a healthy relationship, and now they can carry that into their relationships. It changes your family tree, right? It actually will help future generations in your family. And if everybody can learn this stuff, if we get more men to learn this stuff, it'll fundamentally change relationships and families in the future, right? A lot of you guys talk about these modern women and all this kind of stuff. Well, that didn't happen overnight. That happened like through generations of like feminism pushing this stuff. The only way to change that dynamic is like raise your kids in a positive way. And as a man, that's your job as the leader to show your kids what a healthy, loving relationship looks like, right? It provides emotional steadiness, fostering trust and respect within the family. Like I said before, like if you have your shit together during crisis, like people will follow you into hell. So if you are that guy, if you're the husband and you're doing that sort of thing, your kids are going to trust your leadership. Your wife's going to trust your leadership, and then they're going to carry that into their future families, and then their kids are going to grow up healthy and stuff too.
New episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Subscribe now.